Spotlight, lectures and performances on and around Albany State University.
I'm not going to take up a lot of time because D.A. Edwards is coming before you, and he's going to tell you about his presentation tonight. It's the law and civil rights. Deacon Ed, I'm Deacon. You know where I spend my time at, don't you? In church. D.A. Edwards.
Thank you very much. All right. I'm very pleased to have this opportunity to be with you all this evening to present this program. And my focus in the community program for you all is to look at what have been the accomplishments of African American women in terms of both law and civil rights. And what I wanted to do to introduce the program is to present you with an overview of the history of African American women in law and civil rights in Albany and America, Albany, and Albany in particular. So what I'm going to do, I need to move back to, and to get out of the way of the screen. Okay. Well, I had to get out in front of the screen anyway. Well, our overview of African American women, law, and civil rights begins in the 18th century, where prior to the establishment of formal law schools, all lawyers read for the bar. And basically, reading for the bar was a process that belonged to men who came from wealthy families, and they apprenticed themselves to practicing attorneys. That was the way that people became lawyers. Only men could engage in the practice of law, serve as judges, or sit on juries. And certainly for most black men and women in the British colonies and in America, slavery was the law of the land during this period. What happened was the Civil War ushered in a new perspective for African Americans. It changed everything. Union victory and the abolition of slavery gave new hope for African Americans during the Reconstruction period. And during that period, law school became a path, actually, for some African Americans, but they faced many barriers just getting into them. Certainly what happened is that most law schools just simply excluded blacks. Those African Americans that made it through law school had to confront racism when they tried to join the bar. In many states, any association with civil rights organizations such as the NAACP barred your admission to the bar. And actually what happened between 1869 and 1939 was that African Americans independently founded 19 independent law schools. Churches supported most of these law schools. And some were founded and based at existing colleges. All of these law schools failed with one exception. And that one exception was Howard University School of Law. It was formally founded in 1871. And it was the sole survivor among the 19 private African American law schools established between the Reconstruction period of 1869 and shortly thereafter until 1939. And between 1871 and 1876, 62 students got their law degrees, primarily from Howard. The majority of the early black lawyers, including the first black women lawyers, were Howard graduates. And Charlotte Ray was the first black woman lawyer. She lived from 1850 to 1911. Charlotte Ray was born in 1850 to free parents. She was educated at the Colored Youth Institute in Washington, D.C., and worked as a teacher. And she was the first African-American woman to be trained at a law school. She graduated from Howard University in 1872. She was placed on the roll in the D.C. Circuit Court in 1872. Now, there was some controversy. Was she the first African-American woman to actually practice law? And there had been a scholarly dispute about this issue because there had been no documentation of her ever having practiced before any court. However, a Howard law professor found a divorce proceeding that she filed on June 3rd, 1875, Galdi v. Galdi, that confirmed her engaging in the actual practice of law. Now, LUTIE LYTLE. LUTIE LYTLE was admitted to practice in 1897 in the states of Kansas and Tennessee. LUTIE LYTLE is generally recognized as the first African-American woman lawyer by virtue of passing a bar, an actual bar admission. LUTIE LYTLE also was the first African-American female law professor in 1897 after she took a position at Central Tennessee Law School. OLLIE Mae Cooper, along with Isadora Lecter, were the first black women to start a law firm. They had a law firm that was established in Washington, D.C. Violet Anderson was the first black woman to be admitted to practice before the U.S. Supreme Court in 1921. Epsilon Sigma Iota was the first black legal sorority, and it was founded in 1921. Its purpose was social and educational and to induce other black women to enter the study of law. And their founders were Willie Hazel Blunt, Zephyr A. Moore, Gladys Tignor, Lillian Skinner, and the first president was OLLIE Mae Cooper. Jane Boland was the first African-American female judge. She was the first black woman to graduate from Yale School of Law, and she became the first African-American woman judge when she was appointed in 1939. She served as a judge in the Domestic Relations Court of New York City. We also have the Honorable Constance Baker Motley. And Constance Baker Motley was the first black woman to serve as a United States Federal District Judge. She was part of the team with Thurgood Marshall and Brown v. Board of Education. And she was appointed by President Lyndon Johnson in 1966. She was certainly recognized as a champion for civil rights. Carol Moseley BRAUN was a lawyer and the first African-American woman to serve in the U.S. Senate, representing the state of Illinois. She also served as a U.S. ambassador to New Zealand. Rachel PRUEDEN Herndon is recognized as the first African-American woman to practice law in Georgia. She was part of the Gate City Bar Association, as depicted here in Atlanta, Georgia in 1948. And that's her right there. As you can see, a mostly male affair. GWEN was supported by the Georgia Bar Association, and it is now a current and functioning institution. And LEAH SEARS was the first African-American woman to serve as a justice of the Georgia Supreme Court. And she also was one of the founding members of GWEN. Yvette Miller, who was one of my alumni from Mercer University, was the first African-American woman to serve as a justice of the Georgia Court of Appeals. GWEN Keys Fleming was the first African-American woman district attorney. Mary Young Cummings was our first African-American woman to practice law here in Albany. And she was a former city commissioner and former state representative. Lisa Johnson is Dougherty County's first public defender. And we have our panelists for tonight, the Honorable Denise Marshall And she was the first African-American woman to serve as a judge in Albany, first serving in the municipal court, next serving as a magistrate, and now serving as a judge of the Superior Court of the Dougherty Judicial Circuit. Ms. Johnnie Mae Graham is the first African-American woman to serve as a president of the Dougherty Bar Association. And she was also the first African-American woman to serve in the Albany-Thomasville District as an assistant United States attorney. And Counsel NYOTA Tucker was the first African-American woman to serve as general legal counsel for Albany State University. And both Ms. Graham and Ms. Tucker are a part of our panel. And the panel moderator is the Honorable Victoria Darrisaw, who is the first African-American woman to serve as the elected judge for the State Court of Dougherty County. And I segue from that point to now present the program to the Honorable Victoria Darrisaw. And again, the focus is with our panel members to talk about their experiences as African-American women, law, and their view on civil rights as it's progressed through their careers.
And so it's my distinct honor to act as moderator. I don't have to say very much. I get to ask the questions of our lovely ladies that we have with us this evening. I know Greg has given you a brief introduction of them, but I'd like to give you just a little bit more about them. He's hit the highlights. It's hard. He's a tough act to follow. Yes. Thank you, Mr. Edwards, District Attorney. So going in alphabetical order, that's probably the best way to approach this. I'll start with Miss Johnnie Graham. Miss Johnnie Graham, just a bit more about her. She has a Bachelor of Arts degree in history with a minor in political science from Savannah State University. She obtained her law degree from the University of Georgia in 1981, and I think she was not the only person from this area that was at UGA at a similar time. She's been a woman of many talents. She has served as a staff attorney with Georgia Legal Services. She's been in private practice for many years. She's also served as an assistant district attorney, and as Mr. Edwards indicated, an assistant U.S. attorney, and now she is the proud owner of Johnnie Graham and Associates. And some of just a few, because over the years, that she's certainly involved in this community, not just here, but in other areas. Some of her community affiliations include the Links, and of course, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. So we have and welcome Miss Johnnie Graham. Please take a seat. Next, in alphabetical order, we come to the Honorable Denise Marshall, who is with us this evening after having accomplished a great task. Finally got to the end of a case that probably we never thought that began on January 28th. So that's an accomplishment in and of itself, but she's not known just for that. Being an organizer and a completer of great tasks. She also began her career, I'll start with her education. She is a graduate of the Spelman College, where she had a degree. She has a degree in political science. She's a smart lady. It was a magna cum laude degree. And she also went from there to the University of Georgia. Let's see, she has been a first in many areas. Her career began in '81 with the firm of Robert E. Robinson and Associates in Savannah, Georgia, who was a civil rights attorney, and she may be able to share some of the significant events of her time with him. After 4 years in private practice, she accepted a position with Georgia Legal Services as a staff attorney, where she was there for a number of years. She was appointed at some point while at Legal Services by the mayor and the Board of Commissioners as the chief judge of the municipal court, as District Attorney Edwards mentioned, having been the first woman to hold that appointment. She was later appointed as a magistrate judge, and now, as we all know, she serves as our Superior Court Judge of Dougherty County. We welcome the Honorable Denise Marshall. And then finally, only by order of the alphabet, we come to Ms. NYOTA Tucker, who is the Chief of Staff and University Counsel for the Albany State University. She also serves as a pre-law advisor, shaping the minds of future students, future lawyers, for ASU students, and continues to hold her faculty rank as an associate professor of political science in the Department of History and Political Science. She attended Howard University and earned a BA in political science and followed her Juris Doctorate degree with also the University of Georgia. I'm the lone Mercer grad here. Well, that's okay. Oh, with Greg. Okay. Upon graduating from law school, she spent 2 years as a staff attorney in the Albany office of the Georgia Legal Services, and then she traveled and spent some time in San Francisco, California, where she served as an interim attorney with the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, and I'm sure she has interesting events and things that she can share with us from her time there. Upon returning to Albany, she worked for 2 years as an associate in the law firm of the late Miss Mary Young Cummings. So you see there's an interesting tie that flows through all of the panelists that you have here. It's all connected, and although she spent much of her time, her professional career in higher education as a professor, she's returned to the active practice of law when she accepted an appointment as university counsel. She indicates that she is a proud mother of 2 adult children and who have attained things in their own right. We welcome you, Ms. NYOTA Tucker. All right. Well, I'm sure that there are a number of you that have questions that have already been sparked in your minds, but it's my job as a moderator to kind of keep things flowing. So I'll start with a few questions for our panelists, just to sort of introduce the panelists to those persons present. And I would ask you each to share with us some of the day-to-day responsibilities of your current position. Anyone want to take that?
Hardship at the moment, but it requires the operation of a business, and the practice is a business. It is first and foremost there for profit. Secondly, it is there to help others in situations where a specific type of knowledge is needed, and by virtue of training and experience, I may have it. It is time-consuming, it is maddening, it is the best experience I ever had, it is controversial sometimes, but it is where I think, no, I'm positive, it's where God wants me to be. I'm doing God's work. Thank you.
Unlike Ms. Graham, I'm actually a public service attorney, and I tell people all the time, I also serve as chief of staff, and I tell people that it's more like chief of stuff. Forever dealing with stuff. Whatever comes in the door, that's what I deal with, which is quite exciting most of the time, because you never know what your day is going to be like. You get there and you plan to do one thing, and before you know it, you're involved in something else. But I get to be around young people, which is invigorating. I've got one of my former students here, Keisha Jenkins. You know, I've probably got some more students somewhere around in the audience. And I think that's what really is exciting about the work that I do. I think my role as the university attorney is more involved in preventive things. We want to make sure that our students don't get into the trouble. Much of what we share with them is about ways to avoid that. I actually serve as the attorney for the university, and I can't represent students, and many times I'll have students who will come by and will ask for legal advice, and I preface it with, I'm not your attorney, but this is what I would tell you to do. So I don't want to get in trouble. Greg may be after me if things go wrong. But you know, my job is really fulfilling. It's my dream job. I get up, I'm usually at work before 8. I usually don't leave before 6 or 7. But I enjoy the work, and hopefully I'm doing some good.
Amen.
Thank you and good evening.
Good evening.
I'm really glad somebody asked me what I do in my day-to-day job because I've just about forgotten. I've been doing the same thing since January 28th, and that came to an end today. So then I'll go back to what I generally do, which is a wide variety of legal matters, presiding over a number of different types of cases. As an aside, I will say that as a part of what I have been involved in, one of your major presenters this evening did an absolute fabulous PowerPoint and closing argument in what was in a much extended trial. So I think this community should be very proud of him and the work that he does, and I thank him for his invitation. Along some similar lines with NYOTA, I think judging is one of the highest forms of public service. There are a lot of misnomers that go along with it. You think that we control, and it flows down from the bench. Well, having judged for some 18 plus years now, it didn't always go that way. But I enjoy the work that I do. I enjoy the people that I work with. I enjoy the opportunity to serve. It's amazing the common threads that we share, be it our alma maters or our places that we've worked as women in the law, or the places that we've worked over the years. We seem to, either we got it real right or real wrong. And I'm going to decide that tonight we got it real right, because we did a lot of the same kinds of things. But I am very honored to serve as your Superior Court judge. Every day I'm keenly aware of the huge responsibility that has been trusted in me. You don't forget that. Speaking of controversy, it can be very controversial, but it's very diverse. And I think as women of color in the legal profession, we serve a very meaningful role. I mean, I join the others and I have to preface what I say, but I think being as close to members of this community as we are, we serve as a tremendous reference. And sometimes you can't give the answers that people want, but you can tenderly and gingerly point them in the right direction. You can make them aware of what steps, procedures, and that they can undertake. Sometimes people just want to listen. They just want to listen. They need the information. And I think collectively, because I shared this with a number of my sisters in the bar, information is so powerful. And as African American women, African Americans and others are comfortable reaching out to you. So I think we serve an invaluable purpose in our community, and so do my pleasure to serve. Hope to keep serving. Is that okay, Francie?
You're always on.
You're always on.
You never stop. All right, well, that was great. I have another question for you all, because the focus has been on, or for tonight, is on women, the law, and civil rights. And many of you, through reading your introduction, you've had experiences in all those areas. So I'd ask, my next question would be for the panel members to share with us a glimpse of what your college, law school, or practice thereafter involved, significant glimpse, something that you think is significant that ties with our theme. Who wants to go first? We started with Ms. Graham before. Someone else want to start?
Nominate you.
If I were to share, I was actually thinking about some of the experiences that I had when I first started practicing law, when I came to Georgia Legal Services in 1974. there were very few African-American female lawyers. And half the time I didn't know if I was being discriminated because of my gender, because of my race. I guess when I was ignored, I think it was because of gender. When I had to jump through hoops, I think it was because of my race. And sometimes it was all of the above. I remember particularly one incident where was actually one of the first cases, divorce case, and it was an uncontested case. And hopefully I'm answering this the way I should. This may be more interesting than talking about some of the work that I did, but I went before a judge. My client was actually a white male. And I remember that my mom had bought me this new blue pinstripe suit, and I thought I was looking good. I thought I looked the part of the attorney. And the calendar call, the judge called my case. I walked up with my client, who happened to be a white male, and the judge looked at my client and said, "Counselor, may I help you?" Wow. He assumed that I was the client and the white male. I think he almost fell off the bench. That was probably one of the comical ones. I also remember, and I think it was, and Johnny will have to help me with this, was it Judge Culpepper? Mm-hmm. Yeah. He was one of the judges I had up here before. And my first calendar call before him, he demanded that I show him my bar card. He would not let me represent my client until he called the state bar to confirm that I was indeed an attorney. I took it to mean that I looked so young and I didn't realize it. But you know, I've been blessed that I worked with Georgia Legal Services for a while, for 2 years. That was really rewarding work. We had to do circuit riding. I don't know if they're still doing circuit riding.
Yes, they're still doing it.
We had to do circuit riding, yeah, okay. All right. But it was meaningful because many of our clients were people who would not have had legal services had it not been for legal services. A little over a year that I spent in California with the Legal Defense Fund was really great. I worked on voting rights cases, and of course you know that the Supreme Court is now considering whether or not, in fact, the pre-clearance section of the voting rights law should be continued. And I'm hoping that they get it right, because you know those were really meaningful cases that really made a difference to our communities. Not just usually when you try a case, it primarily affects the two people who come before you, or the people who come before you. Those cases had an impact on communities, and it made a difference. The work that I'm doing now is even more meaningful, I think, and it actually, and I'm not the first black female to serve as general counsel at Albany State. Audrey Noble Kimbrough was actually the first one. I was the first female to graduate from the University of Georgia's Law School. I proceeded to
That's an accomplishment.
And that was an experience. So I'm going to pass the mic and let somebody else.
As I reflected about coming to this program and sharing, I'm very sincere when NYOTA is acknowledged as the first African American to graduate from Georgia's Law School. Female, excuse me. That is quite an accomplishment. I think my life and my professional career has truly been colored by my experience at the University of Georgia. I would, that's an amen. Amen. Okay. But Johnny, I had 1 year on you. You left Howard and came. I was already there. Let me set the stage for this. I went to the University of Georgia having left Spelman College with that unique foundational sense of who I was and what I was. Okay, thank God for that. I went to Georgia in '78. It was right after University of Georgia had been sued by then, which was by HEW, and they settled that discrimination suit by agreeing to let a certain number of African Americans and women and other minorities into their graduate and professional schools. So my year of entrance, I think there may have been 10 African Americans in my class. And I was totally convinced that they learned something from the civil rights movement. And it was called passive resistance. They said, we're gonna resist this. So when NYOTA talks about being ignored, I kind of had the feeling that I was invisible, you know, and same difference. They tolerated us, but we were not acknowledged. We were not given the motivational, empowering support that Spelman gave you. So we were just there, and with no real expectation, I think, that we would succeed. Now, some people did succeed, some did better than others. But I think it was really, I'm 55. I'll go ahead and put that out there. So for much of the civil rights movement, I was kind of up and coming and not in the thick of all of it. But I think my Georgia experience, my law school experience, really opened my eyes to a lot. And when I did finish Georgia, I'll never go to Athens. I had to come back off of that because you know.
We weren't going. I have been.
My judicial career required that I show up there, so I retreated from that. But I think it set the stage, or it gave me the layers of coding to kind of prepare me for some other experiences where you weren't acknowledged. It makes you better though. In the long run, it makes you better because you begin to value what it means to be included and to be recognized, and we all want that. Yeah. All people want to be acknowledged and to feel that they have some value. So that Georgia experience, I think, kind of planted something positive. I took that and turned it into something positive, hopefully. I too worked for Georgia Legal Services. And if you're from the Albany community and just basically like I was, I mean, you just didn't know how good you had it. Jobs with legal services take you to places like Rochelle. And I'm sorry. My Anna, Georgia. Okay, it's a little bit the other direction. Annabelle, Rochelle. And then, as we said, a lot of us worked for Georgia Legal Services. That was an exceptional training ground for African Americans, for anybody, for all lawyers, okay? And we stand very proud of legal services. Mr. Edwards is a veteran, and I am, and we don't know where you got me from, Judge Darrisaw. You just came in. Ms. Graham, Judge Solomon, Judge Lockett. I mean, we like I said, we all did it all right or we did it wrong. I don't know which one it is, but we all did it. But those jobs, and we did circuit ride. That's what we did. You went out to counties providing services to underprivileged people who couldn't afford attorneys in civil cases. And so it took you to some places that you just really swear God forgot. Knowing that he didn't, but you just kind of felt like when you walked in. I went from being ignored at the University of Georgia to looking like I was an alien or something foreign that had landed in Rochelle. Okay, like what is she, who is she, and why is she here? And that's what you got. Luckily, there were trailblazers, such as NYOTA and Ms. Lockett and others who served with them, who had begun to lay a credible foundation for organizations such as Georgia Legal Services. So I came in a little bit after much of that work had been done. And in certain communities, still a lot left for you. It was. Like, I want to say Albany was a little different from some of the other communities. But, you know, much of what you hear about the civil rights movement, it had changed a bit, but it was still there, definitely there.
My basic assumptions when I started the practice of law, after having worked with Senator Sam Nunn in Washington, is that I was going to be Constance Baker Motley. That's who I wanted to be. And I knew, because I'd done all the reading on it, you know, she went down to Mississippi and scared the white folks in Mississippi. That was a bad woman. I knew that she and Frankie Freeman had shook them up in St. Louis. And when I say shook them up, these women were so good that they were able to convince old, entrenched white men that their point of view as far as the law was concerned was the proper one. So that my goal was to be Constance Baker Motley Jr. I'm still kind of on that crusade. But I added, as I went along, I added like Barbara Jordan, folks like that. I was concerned with strong black women who were trailblazers. Fortunately, I was able to connect with one who I consider a superstar. Her name is NYOTA, because as Judge Marshall said, our experiences at the University of Georgia were not always pleasant. And we were there some 4 or 5 years after NYOTA had kind of done her thing. It was horrid then. I can imagine what 1971, 72, 3, 4 was like. But the experience so changed me that I just won't go to Athens, Georgia. I won't. But the point is that it, and as Judge Marshall said, it prepared you for, it gave you some veneers, and the other thing that it added to you was a sense of compassion and a sense of nurture that you knew that our folk needed in, say, Fort Gaines, Georgia. Where, like Blakely, they had never seen a black female lawyer. I hadn't either until Mary Young came to town. So I was there, Mary Young, but the point was that the type of advocacy that we practiced was the type that was anti-establishment, in that the establishment was the white folks that had been in charge forever. So here come these upstarts, most of us just out of law school, who shook up the world. And I remember distinctly being escorted to the county line of Seminole County, Georgia by the sheriff. Yeah. So it took a lot of integrity, it took a lot of courage, but that experience shaped me and made me, realize that the world is not, at its best, it's not black and white. There's some grainy gray in there, and that's where lawyers like me come along. The whole entire professional experience that I have had is one that I consider a blessing. If you've ever had a sense of self-worth, it's when you walk out of a courtroom with somebody who just defeated a landlord who had them living in a dilapidated, rundown, raggedy shack in Fort Gaines, Georgia with no running water, and was charging them $500 a month. And if you were able to convince his golfing buddy that he was wrong and she shouldn't have to pay this, then you've established, I think, in your own mind, the foundation for the drive. And it was extremely satisfying. The work that I do now is the work that I chose to do now, and it is satisfying from that standpoint. Because I think that was Martin, it was Dr. King that said the arc of moral universe bends long, but is long, but it bends toward justice. So I am the counterweight to Mr. Edwards. And I feel that my role in this society is as important as the work he does. And he has plenty of important work to do. I ought to know. I hired him. That's the other benefit of having black women attorneys in certain positions. We get to pick who we want. So there's a certain level of empowerment, but I'm just happy to be in the room with NYOTA and Denise, and y'all may not know this, but the largest concentration of black female attorneys outside of Atlanta is in Albany. So we have that distinction. And I think what we do is honorable, whatever it is, I mean, whether you're judging or general counseling or defending or prosecuting, it's all honorable because it reflects that we have come to each point over the shoulders of women who had the same smarts that we had, who had the same drive that we had, but who never had the opportunity that we had. My grandmother was not a lawyer, but she could pick right from wrong real quick. Okay, so what we have to recall and appreciate is not only the fact that we're here. We have to be mindful of history, and we have to be mindful of the future, because we need to reach, I mean, each of us needs to reach a young black girl and bring her to the point where she can be a Victoria Darrisaw.
Great. All inspiring. I feel inspired just by being here this evening and hearing some of the experiences that you have all dealt with. That leads me to my next question, which is somewhat, you sort of foreshadowed it, Johnny, when you talked about your grandmother. And my question is to the panel, to whom or to what do you credit the foundation for whatever it is that was able to get you through these experiences that you've dealt with?
We gotta start.
I start.
Yeah, you start.
Oh, I have so many people to thank. I start by being you're gone. But I am a product, my parents were educators. And I went to, okay, if you're from Albany, you follow this conversation. Y'all know Old Portsmouth Park. Well, I just lived like an old Portsmouth Park before the flood came in that area. And I went to school before integration. My mom started teaching at Portsmouth Park Elementary School my first grade year. And back then, this doesn't sound right what I'm saying anyway, all black teachers knew each other. It was, black schools were like a family, an extension of family. So when I went to first grade, not only was my mom there, but all her friends were there. So I was raised by so many people. I had good, solid parents, I think, and I'm proud to say. But it was like a network. Everybody knew who my mom's child was, and everybody chimed in. I do think I'm very blessed to have my parents, and I think they made a lot of difference in my life. But it was a network, and Portsmouth Park community, where I grew up, was full of educators and first generation college graduates, and the Alice Coachman, and so it was a real sense of community, and everybody teamed together. And I was taught to be accountable, because somebody was going to tell me before I got home, before I left the building. So I think it instills in me that sense of accountability, and it's just easy to go ahead and get it right the first time. That's kind of, I think, and you carry that with you for the rest of your life. But you can't forget. I can forget where I put my checkbook and all these other things, but you just cannot forget some of those foundational injections that you got. And it just makes a difference. I remember that, you're going to be a Girl Scout and you're going to do this program and you don't have any choice. And so you did it. You have to get old and hair thinning and gray and all those things. It was all no gray hair. Don't get me wrong. But, to really appreciate what that mixture or what that infusion was. But now, I'm looking back and, my Girl Scout leaders, who I probably wanted to strangle at that particular point in time, I have to say that because she forced me into leadership, I accepted the mantle later, And those people who pushed me to do things, motivation makes a difference. I don't care how we put it. And I think that's ties back into what Johnny just said. Y'all don't believe this, but it's only like Black History Month, does my mind really go to being a first? You know, your plate is really full each and every day, doing the best that you can, and from where we sit, knowing the importance of seeing so much more in our children than they see in themselves. You so focus on that, you really kind of forget about you. And that's not really a good thing, because we want to use our first podiums to inspire. But there's so much more that we do from our podiums. I think it gets mixed up in there. So I don't know people saying it on occasion like this, but that's not where your focus is. Your focus is trying to make a difference each and every day in some small way. And maybe I can do it at this level, and Johnny does it at another level, and then that same person ends up at Albany State and the elder closes the deal. You know, that's kind of the thought that you have about the whole process.
Thanks. When I think of the influential people in my life, I have to think of my parents. I actually, when I went to 10th grade, a group of us, we call ourselves the Fabulous Five. We integrated the local high school there, in Georgia. And the reason that I wanted to become a lawyer was because I decided that I could pay them back, all those white kids who would ostracize me, who would run and sit at a different lunch table if I sat down, who left a whole row for me to sit in the auditorium when we had programs. I said the only way that I can get back at them is to become a lawyer and change the law so that they can't run away from this anymore, right? But I think it was really the faith and the strength of my parents who supported me and who gave me the wings to fly, because you know, there have been a lot of books written about those students who, like me, integrated public schools. But there are no books that talk about the parents who sent their loved ones into those very dangerous situations. And I know that my parents loved me more than life itself. And for them to let me go every morning to Dublin High School, their faith had to be phenomenal, because I know that they would not have sent me in harm's way. And for them to let me go, it was because they knew it was the right thing to do and that I would be protected, that no harm would come to me. When you've got parents who've got that kind of faith, it's hard to go wrong, I think, you know. It really is, no matter what the temptations might be. And I also think that, you know, that's what we really need to return to. Parents who are willing to make those sacrifices, parents who believe in education, parents who are not committed to self, but committed to the well-being of their kids. And that's what I had. You know, I feel so terribly blessed because I had that. And if I had any, I didn't know Constance Baker Motley. If I had known her, I would have had her as my idol. But, you know, mine was Cornelia Tucker. She was my mom and didn't need anybody else.
I'm going to have to echo what the lady said. My parents, I was born and raised in Blakely, Georgia. For those of you who don't know Blakely, it's about that big. And there weren't a lot of resources and opportunities for a young black girl from a lower middle class family. So that meant that Daddy had to drive us to Albany, because that was a big city. And he routinely made those trips over here. I probably saw Monroe Band before you did. but they made
Oh, no,
a
you
point,
didn't.
maybe a point
I grew up at Monroe.
at least bringing us to, we didn't go on long vacations, but they would take us where they could. But, and the comfort and the nurturing of my community was essential in my well-being, because there was a symbiotic relationship between this house on this corner, this house on this corner, so that there was any acting up between those points. Somehow, it got to where it needed to be, and reprimand was had. But the community, in addition to correcting us and chastising us, and they had liberty to do that where I grew up, they loved us. So you could go down to Mama Lula's house and get some pear pie today and go get some blackberry doobie next week. I mean, it was just that kind of, and most children, if you talk to them, they feel that level of security. I got it from not only my parents, but from the entire area. I recall that when I graduated number 2 in my class, the old man who lived down the street, who my mother would make us take a plate to when she cooked Sunday dinner, he came over and he was about 5'4", little fella, and he said, "I'm gonna buy your dress." I said, "Sir?" He said, "I'm gonna buy your dress and I'm gonna go see you on that stage." Didn't have a lot of education, but cared that I had made the effort. And sure enough, his name was Hezekiah Stovall. We used to call him Mr. Kai. Mr. Kai was front and center when I marched across that stage at Early County High School. Those are the kinds of experiences that our children deserve. And the fact that we have slipped away from the communal effort, of the communal model and paradigm of raising our children is to our detriment. But having said that, having had the community, I also had, like I said, this burning desire to be, well, it started out, it kind of changed as I grew older, because it actually started out as Mary McLeod Fulfillment. I was going to start school, just because I was smarter than anybody else, and I thought that they would benefit from my being 19 years old and knowing everything. And then we went from Mary McLeod Fulfillment to, as I said, during the 70s, Barbara Jordan. And finally, when I actually got to meet Judge Constance Baker Motley, it was at the funeral of C.B. King. And I got to spend a little bit of time with her. I was like, okay, that's it. All-time role model in the whole world. Besides Frankie Freeman, and this is more tonight in honor of her. She's a Delta, but she was, and she's 96. She's still alive, and she's still kicking butt, y'all. Civil rights work was her passion. Minority and women issues were things that she's put a lot of time and effort in. So I actually look at and for people who can, who know and have proven that empowerment in terms of its effect on the whole society can be affected through the practice of law. And so those are my inspirations. The college lady, the lawyer, and the other lawyer. And my parents.
Now, I've been asking questions, and I do have more questions, but your questions might be more relevant, certainly to you. So if you have some questions that you'd like these wonderful ladies to try to answer for you, I'd be glad to come to you, and we can hear from you personally. All right, wonderful.
I'd like to know, being a past retired librarian, when will you young wonderful women write my biographies so that they can be in a library? I need somebody to write a book about your experiences, because we failed to do that. Hopefully, somebody can transcribe what happened tonight. And the second question is, what is your perspective on the impact of technology based on being baby boomers and then seeing how technology changed you? Take that.
I think that technology has been most beneficial to those of us who are interested in the practice of civil rights law. For instance, had there been no camera, we would not have known about Rodney King, or at least it wouldn't have come out that way. And now with the advent of Twitter and Facebook and those social media that allows things to be communicated in split-second time, I think it changes the dynamic in terms of the way other folk deal with us. It's one thing for you to come to my house and drag my child out and go hang upside a tree in 1963 Alabama, and I didn't have any way to document that. Now, little brother has a camera that can do this thing and lickety-split. He can have it out on Twitter before you get back to the house. So it does matter in that way. As far as technology in the practice that I have, it's beneficial now because a lot of the pleadings are filed electronically. So you do e-filing as opposed to toting it down to the courthouse. That's beneficial. A lot of legal research is conducted online. And your communication with colleagues, whether it's relating to work or professional stuff. In fact, Greg sent me an email with regard to this. So the way we communicate and the level that we use technology has been positive. I want to caution, however, that we should not let that be the only way that we communicate. Our social skills are deteriorating because we think LOL actually means laugh out loud. You probably don't know how to spell that, but the point is that it is beneficial.
I feel like Oprah.
Maybe a good thing. I think Johnny has it right. I think the internet is probably the greatest equalizer of our times. The uprising in Egypt and the mass protests that have occurred have happened because now you can communicate. You can communicate quickly and efficiently and cheaply. And that has changed the way that people see themselves and they see others. And the information, now we are very much aware of what our civil liberties are and what our rights are, and when we're treated unfairly, because we get to interact with people 1,000 miles away, and we learn about the things that they have done, and so it's a great equalizer. I must agree also that sometimes the internet and all the technology in terms of texting, I see it in some of my classes where people do abbreviate, and sometimes they've lost the art of true writing, but all in all, technology has been good, and there's no way we can get away from it now, so it's part of our lives.
Well, I don't want to rain on this technological parade, but there's a downside to everything. Technology is wonderful. I mean, I love the internet. I think one of the reasons I wanted to be a lawyer is because I thought lawyers were so smart. They knew so much. I didn't know they were just researching it and telling you what they read. But that impressed me. And now as my memory begins to fade and I'm in a conversation and I can't think of the person whose name I want, I just Google it or look it up, or I get an answer. And increasingly my thirst to have that answer is just growing. So if I can't remember, I just look it up and say, okay, let's go. So that's a good thing. I even had to get a hotspot on my phone. I had to give up the old phone, and it's kind of addictive. It is growing, and I appreciate that. But I think with every advance we see in technology, that we should commit ourselves to being an army of one, to be sure that we share with our children and with others the downside to all this technology. Mm-hmm. Yes, we can video anybody coming and snatch up a little one out of our house, but cameras and other forms of technologies are also covering our loved ones. They can't go out and do the wrong thing innocuously. They're subject to being taped and located and recorded. And, I got a lady that's on the run. I mean, she's been gone for several months now, but I guess I shouldn't say this. But technology is working for us, but it can work against you as well. So unless you don't commit to do the right thing at all times, and it's always the right time to do the right thing, then we need to be aware of it. And those not sitting in this room need to be aware of that. And that it's becoming a part of major investigative protocols. And I'm not saying skirt justice or do the, we just need to be aware of that. And I agree, and I was so ignorant when I did this. McDonald's had a sign. I didn't know about texting, and I didn't know about the broken language that you use when you text. I actually went through the McDonald's window and challenged somebody in the window as to why they would misspell a word. It was months before I realized that was a part of a broken language that people were texting. Because I didn't understand. I said, why are you advertising this? Why are you promoting it? I didn't realize that was another culture going on. I was much behind that. But it is time in our children. Our children need to learn how to spell correctly. Then you're free to abbreviate. But when you learn that going into it, it's hard to correct that. But we just need to take it a step further. I am all for technology. And I love when people can do things fast and get it and share it and move forward. But there's a downside to that as well. And when you see some of the things that I see that come off Facebook and the like, and other forms of social media, there's a positive side, but there can also be a downside. And we just need to caution our children about that, just to stay positive.
The question was answered, but I do have a question. When are you going to write your book, and what would be the name of it? Oh, wow.
I don't actually. I'm not considered writing a book. I'm too busy doing. I'm too busy doing me. However, I think that in the grand scheme of things, if the written word, which we're getting away from, is look, technology. But in the grand scheme of things, I think that we need to tell our children. One of the problems that I think that we as a culture have, this has nothing to do with civil rights. Yes, it does. We as a culture have wasted, I think, is our history in terms of. There's a song. I mean, there's a line in the quote-unquote Negro National Anthem that says, "We have come over a way that the tears have been watered." Nobody has told our children about the struggle and the tears, because you know what? If we had, and we had told them properly, I wouldn't have to look at Tommy Hilfiger or whatever his name is on your rear end. So if I had to write it, it probably wouldn't be about my life. It would be about, my time. It's my time. And I think that we need to tell our children about the time. Self-pride is one of the, it's like self-preservation. You gotta have it to live. And if they don't have it, then what's left is filled by Kanye West, Lil Scrappy, folks like that, who perspective may be their perspective, but it's not healthy. I'm all for literary explosion and expansion, but I have never yet determined that walking around with the clothes hanging off your tussle has any literary value. Y'all, I may be too old. Y'all still me.
No, you're right. I don't want you to write.
Because one of the things that happened in my history was people dressed up to go wherever they was going, because you had to make, the forward impression was the best impression. And so you came out looking like you were somebody. And so if I'm gonna tell a story, I'm gonna tell my story and incorporate my grandmama's story, my mama's story, my neighborhood story, my college classmate story, so that our children can know that there is a better way. That's our faith. And I'm having. So how did I get to be an expert? I was one. But it would be, it's my time. It's my time.
Johnny, I think I just have to say ditto, all right? I thought about writing a book, but it would actually be about my parents. And I think I would, the title would be Gentle Warriors, because I think that's what they were, you know. When I faced what I thought was humiliating or just, you know, difficult situations, whether it was in high school when I first integrated Dublin High, or whether it was at the University of Georgia, I would remind myself of what my parents had gone through. And I remember when my father told me that he had fought in World War II. And I could not comprehend how he could sacrifice his life for a country that did not respect him as a man. And, you know, when I talked to my father about it, he really didn't want to talk about it. But you know, when the conservatives start talking about patriotism, you could not find more patriotic people than my mother and my father and their generation, okay? So if I were to write that book, it would be about those, and we really do stand on their shoulders. I mean, they were our inspiration. They gave so much. They endured so much. So that would be my story. So I'm writing it as soon as I retire.
Me too. She's not gonna retire.
But Connie, what's the name of your book once again?
It's my time.
It's my time.
Well, actually, it's our time.
It's our
I
time.
got into my granny and my mom and my daddy and all these folks that I know who have made a difference in this room.
You know, I hadn't thought about writing a book. Okay, when she asked the question, then it just kind of came along. But I guess it ties back into my philosophy about so many other things. I think Johnny's right. I think Neil's right about our foreparents. But I think I need to do the prelude to that, to write a book that simply is titled You Matter. And once I can get an individual to have a sense of self, then they'll pull their pants up by themselves. Okay? They don't have to participate in this activity or that activity to be validated or, you know, included. But it's got to be a simple title that's catchy. You matter. And then once I get your attention, I'm going to send you to read Johnny's book or NYOTA's book. Because that books are really too deep right now. We're missing a lot on the surface. I got to get your attention, get you to start valuing yourself and falling in love with yourself day by day by day. But then I'm going to introduce you to the fact that what you're going through is pale in comparison to what Mr. Tucker went through. Okay? And what Johnny's grandparents went through, what my grandparents, then I can take you to the next level. But right now, we're failing on the initial rules of engagement. You got to meet people where they are and take them high. So I think we got to keep it simple. Y'all just much smarter than I am. I'm a simple thinking person. That's where I think we start. If we got to get up to the table, then I'll share.
Okay, speaking of technology, this question is coming from Atlanta. My sister.
I happen to know that there's one.
She says, how about the women's suffrage anniversary? What impact do you think you can personally have on the legal system?
I'm going to take it in simple answers.
I guess she wants to know, because it's the anniversary, how do you feel that you can do a personal impact in the legal system?
You know, I
I really feel that, and maybe I'm small thinking, but I think everything is cumulative. And you start where you can. I meet a lot of people for a lot of different reasons. I personally believe the Lord ministers to me through other people. Mm-hmm. So what I give to so many ends up being what I really need myself. All right. He speaks to me while I'm telling somebody else what they need to be doing. By the time I get home that night, I realize that message was for me in many ways. But, you know, when you walk the walls of the halls of the courthouse, and I have these bailiffs who are supposed to be my protection and all that, if you believe that. And I appreciate it. But you know, people stop you with the smallest little things. But it's just opportunity knocking and knocking and knocking. People call you with things like, you know, how should I handle my case? Am I lawyer this? Am I lawyer? You know, just telling them to step back and trust the professional that you've hired. That is what they do. You know, we know everything. So just you know, I think it's cumulative. You help where you can, and people grow. Or just saying, tell somebody stop. Don't just let your case take its course. Mm-hmm. Witnesses die, they move away, people lose things, just let things happen. You know, it's just the encouragement and the counsel, I think, that makes a difference. I know it makes a difference that, like I said, I'm a big inclusion person, and being a part of. I think our presence in the legal community makes a lot of other folk feel better. Mm-hmm. I get all kind of phone calls. Denise, remember me? Not really, I don't, but go ahead, how can I help? You know, that's how we go. Some people I actually do know, but don't remember, you know, just because of rising and the sets of the sun. But I think that makes a difference. I think we are empowering people with every step that we take. Or I call Johnny Graham, yeah. Good. Good. You know, at least you're seeking information and you know where to go. Yeah. Some people would learn something, but they don't know how to start. So I think we are creating somewhat of a nexus to information and empowerment. So we don't do anything else great. I think we've done that.
Yeah, I probably think more of a collective effort now. There's probably very few things that I do solo. I've found that when you got a team, it works better. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that we've done at Albany State as part of our strategic plan is to create a Center for Social Justice and Civil Rights. You are probably aware that actually 2011, we were responsible for awarding to the students who were at Albany State College who were expelled because of their participation in the Albany Civil Rights Movement. We bestowed upon them honorary degrees for some 31 students. Now, we had to jump through some hoops to get that done. The Board of Regents at first was not going to hear it. We believe that as an institution of higher education, our students have to be more than just students who've earned a degree. We have to develop them for the real world. We have to make sure that they understand the issues that impact our world and that they will make a difference once they go out. We've got a member of the Center for Social Justice and Civil Rights, Dr. Woodard, who walked in, and we are planning on monthly programs that we'll be presenting because we sometimes find that our students are removed from the social justice struggle. They don't relate to it. They don't understand it. And they sometimes complain about things that if they lived in a different part of the world, they would be happy to be where they are. They have to know that as long as any child struggles, then everybody does, and that they have to do their part. And I think that's what we're doing. We've got some wonderful students at Albany State who I know are going to fight that battle for us. And I think always investing in our kids is a way that we make a difference, no matter what the issue might be.
She doesn't need a mic. They might try to get it from the camera.
In order to piggyback on what Selena was saying about writing a book, Selena, while I'm not going to write a book, I did have the good sense of gathering up all of Mary Young Cummings' things, and I took them to Howard University about 2 years ago. She was pre-technology, so all of her things was handwritten. I was so impressed when I got there because I didn't know what I was doing. It was really a wonderful experience. She was lined up behind Vernon Joy, which was really cool. I took the play that Curtis Williams had written of her life that was performed by Mrs. Hudley. So when I hear from the director, the curator, once a year in terms of what they are doing. They haven't started on hers yet because they were working on one of the presidents, female presidents of Howard before. Then they had all of these boxes of Vernon Joy stuff before they started on hers. So he told me that they was going to get to it and that they would file it, and he was sure. I think she graduated in the class of '67 from Howard, and of course her picture is on the wall. What I also find is if you don't go as far as writing a book, you certainly can write a play. Miss Hadley is pretty good at those. But I find that working out of my church, the young people like to act, and while they may be slow on picking up a book, but they will pick up something to have them to perform. And with the proper directions, the information will get through just the same. And so that is a good vehicle that we can use, even through Langston Hughes' poems. They get to learn a lot about Black history. And so, yeah, put it in writing every chance we get. But as soon as they start working on Mira's things, I'll let you all know. Okay. But she's lined up behind Vernon Joy.
Good evening, ladies. I have a question on behalf of my students who are here from Albany State University, several of them in the History and Political Science Department who are planning to go to law school. What advice would you all have, particularly for the female students, about preparation for the journey to law school, getting ready for the LSAT, and helping them in terms of making decisions about what specific area or discipline in law they should consider?
Especially our young ladies are preparing to enter law school. One of the things that you need to do is develop analytical thinking. And when I say analytical thinking, thinking that says, okay, this is not certain, that is not certain. What are the possibilities are there out in terms of explaining how a solution was reached? Because that's good practice, because most law school courses are taught from the Supreme. That's a lawyer talk, okay? So English is a good major. And prepare to study like you have never studied in your entire life. There's no words to describe that experience. It's part fear, it's part frustration, it's part I'm so tired I can't see straight. But you push on, because at the end, if you do what you should, you'll be more than satisfied with the result. Has that been y'all's experience?
Just want to add one thing, and I probably will disagree slightly with my colleague to the right. And in terms of what you major in, I tell students to major in whatever gets you out of bed and turns you on, what you love to do. First of all, you're going to excel in what you love to do. So whatever it is, whether it's engineering, whether it's math, whether it's biology, history, political science, you do have to be well-read. You do have to know how to write. But you're going to perform best in the subject that you really care about. And you may also decide that you don't want to go to law school, and you will have majored in a subject to prepare you for law school, and you've now decided that maybe that's not your piece of cake. So I always tell students, really find out what turns your pages, and you go for that. And because law schools don't require any particular major. You can major in music, and music majors, that's a tough discipline. And as long as you have a command of the written language, you'll do fine.
Just to add a little to that, ditto much of what already has been said, but I would just say, learn to love to learn and develop those study skills and discipline to study. I mean, that could be a conversation in itself about how we study. Okay? Cramming is gone. Okay? No more cramming. I did my share of it. Okay? But it comes to an end. Because you are training your mind to think analytically. And it's a process of what is the next question or position. So, and if you learn to love, and somehow we can get off base with that a little bit. I mean, I don't know if we called it nerdy, or I can't remember what it was called when I was younger. But you develop good study habits, bookworms, and a little derogatory comments. But if you go to law school, learn how to study now. It's a little hard to get there to learn how to study and then cover all the necessary material, because you've got to come up. You got to come up to scale. I mean, you got to train your mind to be able to sit there and put hour after hour, go to the restroom, have a coffee break, come back and go at it again. Your Saturday is the library. Your Sunday is the library. I mean, it just puts a cloud over your whole life. But it's worth the journey. I'll say that. It's worth the journey. But it's intense. And nobody can hate first year law school more than I do. They told me what to take, who to take it from, we would test. I was at the University of Georgia. If you didn't get to the library before the sun came up virtually, you didn't get there because the football enthusiasts took over the streets. It was just not. But it's intense study, and I'm not sure. I spend a lot of time on college campuses, that kind of thing. But if our students are committing to the concept of learning, okay?
I'm going to have to bring it to a close, but I would like to say this to those students. I echo everything that these ladies have said. Read, 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 but not just read, read with understanding. When you come across a word that you're not sure of, that you don't know, if you just keep reading, you are skipping over knowledge. You're skipping over the meaning of something. And then also seek out what I call OFLAGs. OFLAGs, O-F-L-A-G, opportunities for learning and growth. Just such as this evening, I thank you all for coming. It's been a pleasure to be here with you. Thank you for having me. Greg, to the Civil Rights Institute for hosting this event. I turn it over to you. Thank you very, very much.